Hello, I'm Reverend Leah Antwala, and welcome to Clergy in Collars Getting Coffee. Today, my very special guest is Stated Clerk of San Diego Presbytery, my friend Frances Lynn. She is a graduate with her MDiv from Bethel. She has her MBA. She plays harp. She's a collector of Hello Kitty. And we know each other from working on our D-Mins together at Pittsburgh. So welcome to the show, Frances.
Thank you. Thank you for
And
having me. This is going to
yeah,
be
and
fun.
and you dressed the part. I mean, I was like, I should have worn I have a purple Care Bears.
You got your Care Bear behind you, but I
Yes.
was just looking at all your clips before I saw Steven on it. I'm like, dude, dress a little bit more. I can make fun of him because he's a great friend. And I was like, what? So anyway, and I know you had this thing about Care Bear. You even
I
talk
do.
about it in your sermon. You sent me the sermon. I loved it. So
Yes.
this is in honor of our friendship.
Awesome. Yeah, you're so good at that stuff. But of like all those small little like details, I absolutely love it. One of the things that we were talking about before I hit this record button, we were talking about how you wanted to be introduced, and of course I did everything you didn't want, which was the labels. And so we were talking about labels and how titles and all these things, you know, how they can separate and divide us. And I mean, you're about ready to
Walk
get
into
your
the dark
final.
side. Yeah.
Yeah, walk into the dark side and get that title. You're about ready to be ordained to your position as stated clerk, which is super exciting. But I mean, it means you're really thinking about this topic right now because you've been doing this. How long have you been in that role?
As a stated clerk, this is my fourth year.
Okay.
Fourth
But
year.
you did other things in the church.
Well,
Right.
previously I was a business administrator and executive director for a
Right.
church, a large church here in town. So I love numbers. I think Leah knows that. And so I can always go there. But, I think God is really training me to be more pastoral and see things from other perspectives.
Well, I think those are skills that will also, I mean, definitely benefit you in your current role. I think I mean what I love about some of the diversity and why I think, as we were speaking to, do we see people as their titles and what networks and things they connect us to? Do we respect them because of those accolades and like where they went and where they attended and all that? Or do we see people as children of God and treat them thus? That's it. That's like the only label that is relevant toward
Yeah.
building.
So recently, I was speaking with someone from GA nominating committee, and this person asked me, "Why do you think like the ruling elders always said, 'I'm just a ruling elders'?"
That
And like,
just, right?
yes, and I'm like, "Oh, do you want to go there? That's really going to make my blood boil, and I don't know if you want to hear what I have to say about that." Um, I think there's two things, right? Some folks really are getting really comfortable about their calling and not really recognize all the gifts that we bring to the table. It's
Mm,
not about whether you are an ordained minister or not. I think we all bring very specific gifts. And so you're not just some person. You are a special, beloved, precious child in God's eyes. So don't downgrade yourself. Like,
yeah.
first of all, don't do that. And for others, please don't do that to other people because you know what? We are all the same in God's eyes and
Hmm.
we are just as precious. So I don't know. I struggle with that because
Well, yeah, go
part
ahead.
of me have struggling about this whole ordination thing because I feel like once I walk through the other side, how am I going to be able to um be relatable to my fellow ruling elders or deacons, because at some point I want to keep punting. You are not just something.
You're just not anything, right? You're everything.
You are everything. I love that. Yes, you are everything. And I can't believe that today we're still hearing that. And it just pains me.
I mean, and yeah, and I feel like, at your position, you probably experience that more than I do in the everyday life in my church, right? Like, I have ruling elders and things, and like, I just always have seen it as we have different roles and responsibilities, and
Right.
we have some overlapping roles and responsibilities. But you get that more as you keep going up, right? Or depending on where you are.
Right.
Like, this just happens to be my climate. The church climate where I serve is not particularly worried about a hierarchical
Right.
structure. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if it's because I grew up as a preacher's kid and we always had to help with all the activities, that it has never occurred to me that my role would prevent me from washing a dish or setting up a table, right?
Yeah. And literally, like, I just think as a pastors, well, as a leader, let's not even talk about pastors. I think as a leader, if you're not able to do the things that you are directing people to do, then you are not qualified to be called leader. Like, when I was in operation, being the operational director for a church, I I have a crew of custodians. I would always tell them, if I'm not able to clean something, then you shouldn't even have to deal with it. So I'm not going to put them in a place to go clean up somebody's mess if I'm not there with them, right? And of course, there's going to be times that I'm not able to, but whenever I can, I always make a point. We are a team. There's nothing beneath you or beneath me that we can do together. And I think that's so critical. I do have pastors feels like, well, I just need to tell you to go do something. I'm like, that is so wrong. No.
Well, in general, I find the only people I can try to tell things to do stuff is my children, and they really have taught me that no one listens when you try to tell them to do stuff.
Exactly.
And it's really it's interesting. But I also I don't know if this is any part of it. About what might also be working in the background of things. So, always are free to ignore my questions if you don't want to answer them. It's too much. But it made me think, as you were talking about the labels and stuff, like, you are someone who came to the United States when you were a teenager, right? From Taiwan. There's all of that, what it means, like, as a citizen, what it means now when you've had your son who is born and raised, right, has been nothing but an American.
Yep.
And that labeling of always a minority, a model minority, all that kind of stuff that gets put on, and you're this until we don't want you, right? Until you're different. And so I didn't know if you could talk about that. And I also saw you drink some of your bubble tea, which you have informed me is like the drink of, like, originated in Taiwan.
Yeah. So yes, I'd be happy to talk about that experience. And I agree with you. I think part of my resistance to labeling is from some of that, right? You come in, so some of us first get our green card, some of us have the work permit. And so there's a different hierarchy, right? So it's kind of like climbing the corporate ladder. And the last step is, okay, you become the legal citizen. Yeah, so like to kind of go through hoops, because the way you look, the how you speak, and I get that. I think there need to be a better way of doing immigration, right? There need to be
Yeah, that's a whole podcast.
that's another thing. Yeah, let's not even get into that. But I'm
Right,
just
because, like, my husband came in on a fiance visa,
right.
and that's when I became more aware
how
of,
difficult that process.
right. And like, I was an educated person with English as my first
Right.
language, right? I had a master's degree going through this stuff. And I was like, well, they don't tell you. They don't tell you when to go on to the next step. You
No.
only know if you mess it up. Like if
Yeah,
you get caught speeding or something.
exactly.
And
Exactly. And
yeah.
yeah, and also I also having to deal with raising my child, right? My son was diagnosed at age 3 that he's got severe speech delay, and at that point they can only tell us that, oh, he's got a speech processing issue.
Mm.
And so boom, there's your label. He's always going to need special education, he's going to always need this, he's always going to need that. And I think I shared this story with you, like, so I that's the one primary reason
Yeah,
that I
this reminds me of Jesus flipping the table in the temple, right? That you're like, no, thanks.
right. Right. And so I feel at that point I'm starting to stress out being the first time parent and wanted what nothing but the best for your child. You're
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm just gonna homeschool this child, right? So I homeschool him till he was 6th grade. And at that time I was like, I only have limited capacity. I don't have the best patience there. This. And so I told my husband, like, hey, if we don't transition him back into the traditional schooling, I'm going to kill him or he's going to kill me. And so we made that transition. And you know what?
It's called
Once
middle
we made
school.
that transition, he's nothing but straight A all the way till he graduated from college just last year.
Mhm.
The joke around my house is that I held him back because when he was with me, he was getting all kinds of C's and B's, and we were jumping up and down. We're thinking like, oh yeah, maybe we should go check out like vocational school, be a plumber, and like he
I
just
mean, and do it. Go ahead. Sure.
great, right? Like, and but it's like he wants to be a doctor. I'm like, okay, I was thinking this is it, but God had this, oh, this so much more.
So when he integrated back to school though, did he have that speech
Yes,
label still?
yeah, he continued to have that. And I remember, and that's another thing that really ticks me off about our educational system, right?
Mhm.
So so every year as parent, you go in there, you negotiate with the school district about how much service your child can get.
Mhm.
And I remember all through middle school, I every year I go in, I was telling the district person, you know, we need this service, we need this service. He still needs services. And the person will look at me like, but he's getting OAs. Why do you need services? And at such time, I go, so you mean until I flunk him, therefore, then he can get services? It just like so I was so mad. Like every year, it's like I have to prep myself every year to go into that meeting just to get services. And I have to always explain, you have no idea how much we work at home in order to get to this place.
Mhm. But it,
Um,
but is
yeah,
it like a system design for failure rather than success?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
what is that? Because there's sometimes I fear the church dogma also does that, right?
Oh
There's
yeah.
nothing we can
Big time.
do. We're already failure.
Right.
We can't, do anything. And it's interesting. So that's probably a place where I wrestle a bit in the like a lot of bit. I like to say it. I wrestle a lot of bit with the text, but where's a place like where are some of those places that you feel like you wrestle theologically, like with the text or in relationship to like
What we're going through
right,
right now.
or yeah, your experience or what you
Yeah.
see at the church or whatever.
So first of all, I just had this conversation recently with a group of Presbytery leaders. And I said to them, please know whatever happened today, it's not your fault. I
Mm,
think, first of all, we need to recognize that it's a lot of factors, but you are not to be blamed. So do not start with the posture of, I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to fix this church. I'm going to do this so we can do what? We can get better. What's better? Oh, you're talking about pre-COVID? Is it that great? Oh, not so great. Well, then why do you want to go back to that place, right? And so it's kind of like, how do we move our leaders forward? And I think we need to give them permission to grieve. But you can't grieve forever, right? Come on.
Mhm. Well, yeah,
You
'cause
got
grief just piles up on grief. Like the next thing
exactly.
that happens.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we need to just start moving forward. The denomination need to do that too. Instead of thinking about how many membership we have lost, how many, it doesn't matter. No. A lot of that is because people passed away. Are they going to come back alive? No. So and
Well,
to
if they,
me,
I mean, they might, but it will have nothing to do with us.
well, exactly. But then for me, it's also thinking in terms of the church. What if the church looks differently? What if it's not about preserving an institution? What
Mm.
about it is doing something that's life-giving within our each individual community? And that's what you and I talked about our doctorate, where I was really hoping that we can, you know, I would like to ask those type of questions. What's the new
Right, because it's a doctorate in missional leadership. Like that's it. That's the framework of
right,
the program, right? It's
right,
not just. It's very focused
right.
on a certain aspect of the church relationships. But I think you asked you brought up a lot of really good things there about what is it if we go, okay, these are the gifts and resources we have now. This is
Mhm,
where we are
mhm,
now.
mhm.
And some of where we were, right? Like my church used to having 500 members or 800 members in 1870 when
Right,
it started.
right.
Okay, we don't have that now. We're, if we have that again, we'll deal with that surprise as we would
Yeah.
any. But it's like what how do we be the church now? What does
Mhm,
it mean to be the church, to do the church? And isn't it about the label of just being, da 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 Presbyterian church in this particular community? That would be a label for the church. Or is it about the people in the building, what ministries and missions
mhm,
you do, or how you use the resources you have to serve God's people?
mhm.
And I mean, you serve in a very different way than I do, because you serve how many churches do you have in your
We
presbytery?
have currently 30.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you serve all 30 of
Mhm.
those churches on a day-to-day basis, plus then the work that you do
Yeah.
in addition to that, which you do a lot. You know everybody. You know all the people I know. I don't know how we didn't meet before we met, because
I
we know
know.
so many of the same
10 people.
people. Um, but yeah, you do all the things for General Assembly and all this kind of stuff. Um, so it's very different, because I feel like um you see more variety or flavor. Like you see a different aspect then of the church maybe than I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yes and no. I think ultimately one thing that keeps me doing what I am doing is that I feel people in general wants what's best for the kingdom,
Hmm.
right? It's just perhaps we are all asking and looking at the wrong place.
Mm.
And what does that mean? Like for me, it's extremely important to reframe, reorient ourselves, because I feel like right now we are so like overwhelmed by all the things that's going on in our world. And we're not only overwhelmed by the world, we're overwhelmed by our own. And what if we take a step back and look at it from different angle? Because God's at work. You and I both
Right.
know, right?
All
God's
the
at
time.
work.
God is not on a break.
Right. And so God is not lost. We are the one that's lost. So how do we reposition ourselves like I said, I am never the one I'm not interested in preserving an institution. That
Mm.
is not where my heart is. And I would find that work very draining. But so I think first and foremost, I think we need to all identify our main purpose for doing this. And like I said, I feel in general, people want to do what's best for kingdom. And yeah,
I was wondering, see, and again, I'm always wondering. And
that's
now I
good.
feel like anytime I say that, now it feels like we're back in class. I notice, right, in the practices that we do. But no, I am wondering, like, you have had to adapt
Hmm.
in so many different ways at
Hmm.
so many different times. So do you see that that adaptations, those changes, and recognizing that at every one of those, you just became a more whole Francis, I guess. Like at every one of those changes, you are those things that you were before the change, but you have managed to
Hmm.
incorporate them or adapt to bringing them into where you are now. I
Absolutely.
mean, not just the immigration, becoming a parent, all,
Everything.
the programs, all those things, but languages, um, and also different various religion backgrounds, right? You have interwoven there.
Yeah,
Do you think that helps you to be able to keep that open rather than narrow framework?
absolutely. I have to. I think for me, I stopped making plans because I know plan doesn't work for me. So like my sermon for New Year resolution, I get, of course, right? As the supply, you always get those like time that
Uh-huh.
pastor don't want to get. It's like, hey, can you come preach? I'm like, absolutely. Have my one of the New Year sermons like, hey, how many of you have the New Year resolution? And I was like, okay, well, I stopped doing that because I know it doesn't work anyway. So why should I set myself up for failure? Um, so I believe in certain planning, but I believe in organization, but planning is a different thing. Like I know people who plan and plan and plan, and just to have it all diverted and get frustrated. I like to stay fairly fluid, and I feel like part of it is survival instinct too, right? Because coming into as well, as a foreigner, you had to adapt, and you constantly had to adapt. And just even for people who are the majority voices, you all have to adapt too. You have to adapt to
Yeah.
welcoming me into, right? And, and
Or
you have to,
unwelcoming you,
well,
depending on where
exactly,
somebody wants to go.
exactly. Or you kind of have to adapt to like having all this K dramas on Netflix, which I
Oh,
know you enjoy.
I do. And I actually, so I love the way that and now I don't know that it would ring as true now because more people are watching them for sure than they did before. It's kind of become even more popular culture in the United States. But you paid me like the highest, my like highest movie television nerd compliment when you were like, I can't believe I can have a real conversation. Like in all the time you lived here, this is the first real conversation with a white person you had about K-dramas where I was like, no, I didn't like that one. I don't actually think he's that great of an actor. I think he's mediocre or whatever. And I won't name the actors just in case they're
Right.
watching. But knowing
Well,
that
let's
it's
hope
fully
he's
my
watching.
opinion.
Come on.
Let's hope he's watching. Oh, so I should say it. I don't, should I expect the feedback? I think Lee Min-ho is mediocre. I know he's beautiful, but his acting, yeah, he just gets good parts because he's popular. That's my opinion. And I've seen that routinely in American pop culture as well. And I also
Mhm.
won't name names about name names about that. But there are several that you're like, they're not, they're not Meryl Streep. They're not like
I
that's
know.
class, right? That's as popular as he is in Korean culture.
So listen, I have had more conversation about Everything Everywhere, about Michelle Yeoh.
Oh,
And than like before. I literally got a text yesterday from somebody asking me like, "Hey, this is pretty big." I'm like, "Yeah, like first female lead in Asian, right? Culture. That's huge for us.
Yes, to win an Oscar, for sure.
Win an Oscar. Is is it really warranted? I personally, may I say this? Like
You
yes,
can
I
say
can say
whatever
it
you
because
want.
I'm a
I will
minority.
disagree with you on this one because I thought it was brilliant. But
Yeah,
something that I will say was not only her, but that screenplay, that directing by the Daniels, it was the whole cast was brilliant.
yeah, but there, I think she's got more privilege this year because the context, because the setting, right? And of
Right.
course, people like to see an underdog,
Mhm.
of course, and there haven't been so history making. But I would say the other candidates are pretty strong as well, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like,
There wasn't, yeah.
right. So like for me, it was like kind of like I appreciate the recognition and I'm so glad that, you know, yes, for her. Is this really the best picture, the best, performance? Um, I mean, it's good, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This is hands down the best.
But do you think, okay, so this is to pull it
I'm
back, I
gonna
guess.
I'm gonna get a lot of hate mails from my Asian people.
I will too. I'm sure people are gasping at some of the things that I've said as well about some people. Um, but do you feel like, so I think about collaborations, right? You take a movie
Yeah,
like Everything Everywhere All at
right.
Once, where you have there's not a weak aspect to the stuff. As for what I saw, right? I thought the writing was solid, the directing, like I said, all the actors
Mhm,
brilliant. Many of them whom I've seen and loved multiple times,
right.
and and um the costumes, the effect, all of it beautifully choreographed. So if we were to like look at that for the church, like that doesn't get done without collaboration, without trusting
Absolutely.
the people around you,
Mhm,
without allowing everybody to use their gifts
yeah,
and doing and casting them in a part where they get to really use and
yeah.
showcase them,
Mhm,
right? And and there are times where I'm like, man, I feel like we need to take a lesson from the playbook
yeah.
of how we do that sort of stuff, and not to be performative,
Mhm,
but to see the value of like when it's just a single, right? When it's just like a one good thing that you don't break all those records, right? That
mhm,
broke all the records
yeah.
across the board because of because of the collaboration involved, because
Absolutely.
of the amount of strengths in that. And so what does that look like? What would a presbytery look like, right? Well, obviously we're not going to win an Oscar, but like,
Yeah. And I think this is part of we talked about, um, you wouldn't call me being the cynical one, but here may be a little bit of that coming out. Um, how many movies are made a year?
oh, so many,
So
way
many,
more
right?
than what there were when we were kids.
Right,
Yeah.
like globally, right? I'm not just talking about,
Oh,
right, US.
yes. So
So
many.
how many people get to win an Oscar? One.
One.
So are we gonna just say all the rest of the movie that are they're just trash? No, of course
No.
not.
And oftentimes somebody who wins is not the person I would have voted for or chosen.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think there's so much we can do as individual congregations. It's not about it's not about being a Christian that we have to just give away everything or give up everything. It's not about that. It's about baby step. I feel like it's important to appreciate what we have and
Mm,
even just baby steps, celebrate that baby step. And a lot of baby steps going to make a big impact.
mm.
Um, but I think the hardest thing to do in the congregation context is to have the complete buy-in.
Ooh.
And I
That's,
think,
yeah.
yeah, and I think in order to do things right, we all have to create that unity.
Mm.
Without that, it's really hard to really do anything. That's why I say celebrate those little steps, because that's easier to get buy-in than to do a big project.
So what's interesting about words, like there are some that I mean, that's part of the stuff you're going to take when you get ordained, but as well, in any office. So you've already taken them, right? So that question of the purity and the furthering purity and the unity of the church. And it's interesting is sometimes I think it depends on how you view that word. Because for me, like when I picture God, I hear James Earl Jones, but I don't see James Earl Jones. But I was just like, this is the voice
Right.
of, whatever. Like that's one of the things. So no, I don't actually think that's God's voice, but like it's a
We
calming.
would love
Right?
that's God's voice. How's that?
Yeah. So, but like the unit, well, like I picture God, I don't see like giant white guy with beard in robes on a cloud, right?
Mhm.
Even though Revelation, I told you, talks about the throne of rainbows, and I don't know why we talk about this like four-headed dragon instead of, I mean, which is cool all on its own, but like I'm like, we don't talk about that throne of rainbows nearly enough.
Right.
But in my opinion, because the rainbow does embody the image where I see God. When I actually see God, I see God as a full circle, which is what
Mhm.
rainbows do. We just can't see the other half,
Right.
right? Because they're
Right.
below our sight line,
I know.
which
That's such a
speaks
beautiful
volumes,
image.
right?
Mhm.
Isn't it? But so but sometimes we have people who see unity as like sameness, right? Unity is everything being, like a candle burning where we're all like this
Mhm.
giant
Mhm.
single thing. And it's very different if you see unity as like a circle embrace, right? Like
Yep.
that we versus
Oh, I love that. Yes.
one thing. And so sometimes I wonder if it's not, as you said, you try to focus on framework, like the importance of the frame. And if some of the work that we maybe need to do as we go into the future, recognizing that we all had this pandemic happened,
Mhm.
and it didn't just happen to you or me, it happens
Right.
to like, everyone.
Right. Mhm.
We all adjusted differently. We're all still adjusting differently,
Right.
depending on our resources and all of that. Um, I Yes. So I think some of it is the framework. So what's the framework? What's the framework you would give to the church about unity then, if that's what the thing is?
Yeah. So for
Or
me,
what's the kingdom of God look like?
yeah, for unity, for me, it's not necessarily the sameness, but it's more about, do we all agree that the most important thing here is to glorify God's name and to
Mm,
do the kingdom work. Now, if that is the focus, I think there's a lot of those things can be taken away, because a lot of time people come into it now with pure agenda. And I would say I may not come into doing certain thing with a pure agenda,
right.
but in every turn I have to refocus and ask myself, hey, if I go this way, is this really going to honor God, or is it trying to honor myself? Where
Mm,
is it my ego doing, right? Like, so I think every step is asking that same question. Hey, by doing this, am I honoring God, honoring my fellow brothers and sister? I think that would make a difference. A lot of time we come in, I would say, especially for people who are really good in doing technical work, where we already know the answer at the end of it, right? But every time, if you're dealing with people, regardless you like them or not, they're God's children. So how do you treat God's children, right?
right.
With love, even if you don't agree. How do you do that? And I think that's what I talk about. Celebrate that baby step, because we're not going to go from A to Z like straight. It's going to take a lot of twists and turns to get there. And I think oftentimes in ministry we set a goal too hard to reach.
Mm,
And that's not helpful. I want to celebrate those small steps and
Mm,
make it a habit to celebrate that as a congregation, because
mm.
nobody wants to kind of feel defeated all the time. Like whatever I do is not going to make any impact, then why should I do it?
So it's interesting hearing you say this, because something I've been toying with for a while, and I really do think when we're together in June again for class, we'll need to spend some time brainstorming this, because I think you're a really good brainstormer, but you're very creative. But so is like we have these set rites of passages, right?
Mhm.
These times and seasons of the church, but society and everything has changed. And so in
Mhm.
addition to those markings, I sometimes have wondered if there wouldn't be power in like celebrating those other things along the way. Like we'll be like, hey, instead, I know backpack Sundays become a thing. We do it now, right? All that kind of stuff. But what if it's like, hey, all these people got their driver's license, so we're going to celebrate that. Hey, these people gave up their license, so we're going to honor that big life transition. That's a huge
Absolutely.
life transition. You know,
Absolutely.
and because we have commissioning services when things happen, and that's not what it would be, but what would those moments be where we maybe it's not always celebrating, but naming and acknowledging, like
Yeah. And
these
it could be
people just got
grieving together too, right?
right, they just got divorced, that's an
Right.
end of a relationship.
Yeah.
And how do we do a ceremony to hold them, knowing that we might have people in the pews who were there to witness the coming
Right.
together, and now
Right.
they're witness to see
Them be
the
apart.
coming apart,
Yeah.
right? But so that somebody doesn't have to leave,
Right.
right? Because that's
Right.
usually what happens.
Right. Right. And I love that. I agree with that completely.
I mean,
Do
and you also need snacks. You and I would agree that
right.
snacks
Oh yeah,
would
big
be
time. Big time. It have to be good. It's not just snacks. I think one thing we need to get away from churchy, right? The church word. We are doing life together. We're not doing church together. How do we live together? Let's live the gospel rather than doing the gospel, right? Like live it. Like do what Christ taught us, and not, and I know some of this may sound like, oh, easy to say, but it's actually not that hard. Really, it's not that hard. The basic starting points always love people. That's all you need to do, love people. And even if you don't like them, deep inside love them,
right.
right? And I think we, again, and so I go back to a lot of this, it's I fault people like to label things too much. Oh, you are the progressive part of the church. You are the conservative. No, I don't
Sometimes I'm
want,
both of those things.
right. Like recently I have someone ask me that question and I looked at it like, wait, you're asking a state clerk? I'm supposed to be neutral. You're never going to find out what's my theology. On top of that, it's like it could have changed any moment. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember once having a conversation with a guy from my church who has since he has since died, but
Mm,
uh we were having a conversation, and years before he died, he wasn't on, we call it the shut-in list, which sometimes I think is a
yeah,
really
yeah,
awful name, but
yeah.
um he was home, he lived at home. He and his wife
Homebound.
lived at
Mhm.
their home. They did not attend church in person. It was before we were streaming. And so we always send out the bulletin and the sermons printed to all the people. Like on
Yeah,
Thursday or Friday, the office manager sends it out so that there's like a connection, right?
right.
A weekly connection. And so we were talking, and he's like, yeah, I read your sermons every Sunday, and, I really like them, though sometimes I don't always agree with them. And I was like, you know what? There are times I go back and read with them and I don't agree with them. Like,
That's right.
right. There are times
That's
you go
right.
back and you're like, something's changed, right? My,
Exactly.
my viewpoint has changed, maybe because I've listened or read something,
Yeah.
maybe because of meeting somebody new who gave me a different way of looking
Yep.
at something. Maybe it's because of one of those transitions and you gained a better
Yep.
understanding. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about, because of course we have been encouraging you to do, we being your classmates at Pittsburgh, have been encouraging you to lean into your foodie nature. You are one, yeah, you are one of these people that when we're together, I just hand the menu to you and say, Francis, what am I eating? Right? Like I fully trust you to choose the perfect thing on the menu every time. I have a handful of people I give that to because I like to control my own stuff. So
I
like
know,
that,
but you are pretty brave. I feel like I can hang with you because I know you're willing to like give anything a try.
yeah, I'll try it. Though sometimes you give me the information late, like with the bean sprouts. But I
Oh, you
also,
need to tell that story.
so right. So we went for pho and you were like, order the beef, whatever. And you're like, finish, they bring all the things, the bean sprouts and everything are on the sides. And I was almost done with my entire bowl. And you were eating the same thing. Almost done with the entire bowl. And I look over and I notice that your sides are not in your soup. And I was like, Francis, why didn't you put them in? It's so good, right? Scallions, bean sprouts.
Right, right.
And you're like, they're often dirty. I don't know that everybody washes them well enough. And I was like, you literally let me eat all of them. Like you were like, eat the dirty bean sprouts, Leah. I did not get sick though. I was like, they wash them. But but we've engaged it because I do think food and all of that is a place where you see and taste that the kingdom of God is good, right? So that's a part of it.
I have given my menu to God already, just so you know. I have said, God, this is what I want to eat when I get to heaven. I want endless portion of this.
What is it? Can we get that?
Yes.
Can we know what some of the things are?
It's so it's nothing. I love fried rice. I love rice like there's no tomorrow. But because my system, I don't do well with carbs. So I tend to get really bloated and I gain weight really easily. So I have to curtail that. So that's my menu to God. But I also love this restaurant's specific like fried rice. And just so you know, Scott Hakeley was here and I took him to that restaurant and he agreed that's like a really good fried rice.
Best fried rice. Yeah, some of the best fried rice.
So, but then we're not talking about it because you remember we're not doing free publicity for people who are not giving us anything.
We're not giving we're not showing the labels.
So if anyone wants to find out, tag Leah or me, and then when we have a deal, then I will start talking about it. But anyway, so that was what
the only free advertising we do is for God because
well, that's for sure.
Like our existence shares that message, right?
Right. We will pay God to do that free advertisement. Yes. But like no one else deserve it. So but that's it. Fried rice. Very specific type of fried rice.
What kind of specific? Because there are like a zillion different rices.
Just traditional, nothing on it. Just fried rice. Rice, eggs, just the way they make it. It just, I can't even put my finger on it.
Does it have peas in it?
No, nothing. It's just rice, eggs, scallion. That's it. Three ingredients.
Huh. I mean, I'm always, if I get out to California, I want to try it too.
Yeah, come on over.
I mean, I am, there are only like two things that don't speak to my food palate, which is like actual kernel corn, like on the cob, off the cob. If it's not been made into corn flour or cornmeal,
you don't want it?
I don't like it. I think it's texture based. I know it's very sad for even like my family chews it up. I mean, they love it. But I never have, not since I was little. I mean, even when I was a little kid. And cherries.
You don't like cherries? Isn't that like the American staple? Like Washington had the cherry tree?
Yeah, the cherry tree. Yeah, but he cut it down. Maybe he didn't like it either. He was like, I don't. Like he was like, oh, I don't want any cherries in America. No, that is
Oh, I love cherry.
the story goes. Well, a lot of people do like them, or they like specific ones, but I blame now. I do blame everything when I was a kid that was medicine was cherry flavored.
Oh yeah, like the
And
NyQuil, all those things.
all of
It's
it. That was
got
like
a
the
cherry
only,
flavor. Yeah,
yeah. And so I think they ruin. I think it's their fault. All
I
those,
would. Yeah, no, totally. That's a good rationale.
yeah. Even though I know that an actual cherry does not taste like that
No.
stuff,
Yeah.
I can like. It feels like I can taste. Like if I taste a cherry, I'm like, all I taste is a cough drop, like a bad one. Like, and I don't like it.
Oh,
Yeah. So, but that's like really nothing,
yeah,
right?
that's nothing.
That's
Dude,
like
that's
nothing
great.
in comparison to the, and there's more corn and cherries for everybody else. But like, if you like, when you think of then those words like communion and stuff, do you see like, what does that holy feast look
Oh
like?
my God, you want to get me started there?
I do want to get you started.
I have this thing. I always said when I have my own church, like not have when I'm really called to a congregation, that communion's not gonna look like that. Ugh, I hate those little cups thing. It's like the worst thing ever. They're all
Random. Yeah.
fermented, and like you wonder how many people are we gonna send to the hospital right after, right? Like I feel so bad, and it's so hard to tell the church ladies like, hey girlfriends, like we need to get something better than this. And during the COVID, it's especially like
Oh,
worse.
I refused.
Right?
We made our own bread and we put the grape juice in condiment cups
Yeah.
and did it separate because I was like, I cannot serve that. I guess that's the third thing I don't like. Apparently, don't serve me communion wafer with the
Right?
little awful,
Yeah.
it's the worst tasting grape juice I've ever had.
It is, and it does got such bad names. Like I'm like, God's supposed to give you lavish, like this wonderful filet mignon or like a lobster tail. This seriously, and this is how I'm
Okay,
gonna remember Christ? No, no way. I thought that was like that need to be banned. Like,
that's what I talk about. Like, I don't want that to stick. I don't want it to be something I want to like get unstuck from it.
can
Like,
you imagine if someone was their first time taking communion? I mean, that it's really give God a bad name. Like this is not good. It's so bad. Like it's for me,
right.
right?
You say, right, these are the gifts of God for the people of God. And you're like, I don't want this gift. This
Right.
is not a gift.
Well,
I tried your
yeah.
gift. Please don't ever buy that for me. Don't give that to me ever again.
No, it's bad. Like I wish people take more thought into it because we are supposed to take this as even as our Reformed theology, as body of Christ, to
Right.
remember,
Metaphorically.
right?
Yeah.
But it is like bad stuff. Like we need to change it. Like we really do.
So what is on your communion table then? What does your feast look like? Because I get what it doesn't look like now. So what would you have? What kind of breads or drinks or whatever? I mean,
Really
grains, I
want-
guess. It's
Yeah, I
grains.
really wanted a meal. I don't really want to do this bread thing. Like, you know what I mean? I would love to have like a sit down sort of luncheon or something that's not just a piece of bread. Like
Mhm.
seriously, I'm not going to be filled with a piece of bread. Like, you know what I mean? I can
No, I
understand,
know exactly what you mean. That's why I'm
right?
laughing. But early church also, by the way, was more like what you're describing. It was
Right,
part of the whole
right.
thing. It wasn't just this thing that we did as part of the service.
Exactly.
It was the service.
Right. And and I was just thinking, golly, can we at least do that as a church? Let's value each other, appreciate their tummy and give them something good to take and not just give them whatever.
Right.
And it's kind of like in some of the larger churches, like I know they have several different like services and they have to time it exactly, but it's like, this is just bad. Please don't serve that. Yeah, I have a thing about that. To me, I think it really should be a meal.
But also, I will say, as somebody who's, shared some tables with you now and some meals with you, it is an experience of not just like the variety of food and like share this, try that, taste this, here's something. And I mean, which by the way, you do not just when we're out at a meal. You're like, here, try this tea. I brought it from home. Here, have this snack. Like it's more than just when we go like out to a lunch or dinner or whatever. But it's also the conversation, it's the
Yeah,
exchange of ideas, it's
right.
the love that's shared. And I would say food seems to be one of your love languages, like
Oh,
giving
big
it to
time.
people.
Yeah, big time.
But
Yeah.
you don't cook very much though, is that?
Yeah, I don't cook very much because I do all kind of research out there, right? Someone had to do the dirty work. I'm sorry.
And
I
it's
can
not
tell you
you.
well, but like, I appreciate a good cook. You are an
Yeah.
amazing cook, right? Like
Oh,
I love the bread that you did for the class. And I say, Leah, how'd you do that? Well, it's so easy. There's like 2 ingredients or something like that. I'm like,
it was three ingredients. I think it was water, flour, and yeast. That was it.
so good, right?
Yeah.
And it was like I admire people who can cook. Now I can cook, but I don't see like Chinese food is so different. Like there's like different such process, the preparation, the plating and all that. And I was just like, no, it's a lot of work.
Well, and it can, I mean, it absolutely can be a lot of work. And I mean, and this gets into whether or not you see this stuff as soul work or homework, right? Is doing it fill your soul? And you're like, well, the eating and having a meal with people
Yeah,
fills my soul, but the
right.
cooking stuff, not so much. I'll
Well,
leave that
and
up to other
yeah,
people.
I love learning the background of the dish, right? Like where this come from, what's the story behind it. But like I figure I'll trust someone better than me to do the work. Like we all have different gifts. My gift is not that. The cooking
Right.
is not my one.
Right.
So
Right. But I mean, it's really amazing. Like I have well, my sons both like cooking, but the eldest, when when I was beginning to teach him how to cook or bake,
mhm.
um, he loves science. My son, he wants to be a scientist. The eldest wants to be a scientist. And who knows if that will change, but at this point he wants to be an astrophysicist. And
Him.
yeah, good for him. Not a career I would, whatever. My other son wants to be a blacksmith. My eldest wants to be a astrophysicist. What, do you? I mean, we all have different gifts, so it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, we don't
Um,
have any say in it anyway. So don't worry about
oh,
it.
yeah, zero saying it, but I'm like also like I don't see my role as being the no in my kid's life if it's
Yeah.
not dangerous,
Yeah.
right? And them discovering what they want to do,
Yep.
because I want what they do to be soul work, right? And not
Mhm.
home. I don't want
Absolutely.
you spend so much time
Right.
doing. If I were in ministry and this felt like the same as like working in a box factory, or for me,
You
it
should
would
not be
be like,
doing it. If it's
yeah,
not
for me,
you, don't
I'm the
do it.
opposite with numbers, right? So
Yeah.
honestly, if I were working in any job where I had to process numbers all day, every day, I could do it, but I
Yeah.
don't want
You
to
don't
do it.
enjoy it.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, he said that baking and cooking is nothing but like he was like, it's edible science because it's all measuring and like whatever.
Baking
And
is hard though. I don't believe,
yeah,
I think there's a lot more going to baking, like the temperature of the environment.
well,
And
yes.
and the
Yeah.
thing that I think the hardest for me is like, you could see some of the YouTubers say, oh yeah, depending on your like oven or something. I'm like, well, I I almost used the word how, but anyway. So I was like,
You added it in there, but it's biblical.
okay. I was gonna say, well, then how would I know, right? How like
Right.
well, if everything is up to me, I wouldn't be watching you. So you need to tell me.
Right.
So that doesn't work out for me. And
Right.
so
It's
like,
like
for
it's like
me,
the thing where they're like, fold in
yeah,
the cheese, fold in the cheese. Well, what does that mean? Fold
right,
it in. It means just
right.
fold it in, David. Just fold it in.
And I
You're
was
like,
like,
I don't know what that means.
right. And it's like, oh, depending on your oven. I'm like, what then what how many minutes exactly? Like I need it like that. And so I really baking scares me. Baking really scares me.
Well, my husband recently just returned from Kenya. He was home for several weeks, and he did return this time. My ask was I wanted a chapati pan, like in, because we have tried we have obviously in all these years, right? It's almost 15 years. I don't know how I didn't bring back a chapati pan when I came from Peace. I don't for the life of me know how that happened, but it did. And the thing is like, I have other pans, right? Even a cast iron pan,
Right.
but it never does it right. It's, like it's close, but not it, whatever. And so I do think you're right about sometimes it's the precision. Like there are things that you're like, that's not going to taste the same there's something about the pot, the instruments, whatever, like that process.
Or even just like, well, today is it cloudy? The moisture, I'm like, oh my God, forget it. That's too much. Like I can't. I need something that.
Don't you feel like that's part of, like you do that maybe, or maybe I'm just over.
No, when I have to go clean a toilet, I don't say, hey, the temperature is good today, therefore I can. No. I just be like, hey, dude, let's go clean.
When you're dealing with different churches, do you not feel like, whoo, that's a different oven setting than this church over here?
Absolutely.
Like you guys aren't in the same, it's not the same thing. And how do, I mean, this is what when we talk about programs and things, even for the church, this becomes part of the issue. Is we're like, oh, this helped us have church growth. So now everybody wants this, and you just do this program. And it's like, well, it doesn't always work like that, right? Because
I'm going to use something that's really not churchy, but like that's the stupidest thing that anyone can do. If there's a formula, if I can put out a formula, I would be a multimillionaire by now. And, but people, that's not, God doesn't give you a formula. The only formula we get is to love people, love God. So,
right. That's the formula. Do that.
Yeah.
And yet, how many times have we messed that up?
Often. More than enough. And then we say, why, how come this doesn't work? I'm like, what did you do the basic? Oh, I don't like that person. I don't trust that person. I don't want to work with that person. Well, I'm sorry. Sometimes it's that simple. And you wonder, are you serious? I can't make it even simpler than that. And you can't get it.
Well, now again, you're quoting scripture, because that's what I felt Jesus said. And in my head, when I read Jesus, not James Earl Jones, right? That's God's voice. I don't know who has the voice of God, but it definitely has this like snarky tone.
Really?
Oh, when I read Jesus, it's both super calm and loving, and yet, and moments like what you're saying, this is a moment where I feel like Jesus is, well, same.
This is the best thing ever happened to come from a pastor telling me that Jesus' response can be snarky. Oh, I can justify my snarkiness now.
Oh, that's how I do it. Maybe I did that. Maybe Jesus is snarky because I know I am, and that's terrible theology. But like, I was like, there's no way I don't hear Jesus going, which is kind of what you just said. You want me to talk to you about heavenly things? You don't get these earthly things. Like, how is that not snarky?
Right.
Like for me, like what I hear, the other place I really see it is in the boat where Jesus is just trying to take a nap and his disciples are so afraid. Yeah. And Jesus, like me, is an exhausted mom or parent who just wakes up and is like, oh my gosh, go to sleep. Just calm down.
Yep.
We will. And then it's like, oh, it's too bad. It's like,
I know. And I think a lot of time we mess it up. God did not mess it up. We mess it up.
That's a guarantee.
Yeah, it is a guarantee. Yep.
And God is like, I will love you anyway, even when you mess up. I didn't abandon you in the failure. Failing is part of what also.
And church needs to learn to celebrate that too and learn from it.
Well, or at least not have it inhibit you from
from
trying something.
doing something different. Yeah.
Right, because as you said, right, you use the Oscars as the example. Like
Mhm.
all those movies that are made, they didn't fail, but
No.
there can ultimately is just one winner, right? There's one thing that's recognized,
Right.
and that doesn't devalue all the other work
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
was being done, nor does it devalue the process to understanding like, oh, what do I have to do?
Exactly. And my biggest
If
fear
my
for
goal is to get a reward, what do I have to do?
well, there you go. And then you will have to talk to God when you get up there. Like, how come I didn't get an award?
As long
Oh,
as God's
if
serving you some fried rice,
there you
right?
go. I would know if I'm gonna get rewarded when I get that endless portion of fried rice.
Maybe God's gonna give you that now. Maybe
I
you
would
get that
love it. I would love it. I literally can eat that all day
right,
long.
and without any of all the other side
Yeah.
effects. I mean, but that's what it is. I mean, when we watch, we've noted the the Oscars, but the Olympics are the same
Same
thing,
thing.
right? You
Yeah.
have like every level, there are people being cut away. It
Right.
doesn't make them not elite somehow,
Right.
right?
Right.
You're
Right.
not elite, you just happen to race against
Right.
Usain Bolt, or
And
you
then
just
it
happen
could
to
be just
perform
one
against
person.
Simone
Yeah.
Biles.
And it could be one person having a better day than you. It doesn't neglect all the hours that you were in training. And I just think our society have been so focused on that, so reward based on that. And our belief is not based on reward.
Mhm.
So that's also something that I feel like we need to do better.
So, I mean, it also, and then I'll get to my last question, which you're dressed for, and with the Care Bears, but um, it's also that aspect of when we fail,
Mhm.
do we extend generosity and grace the way that God does, or do we shame and make people feel like they can't show their face to us anymore? They can't be present anymore. They can't come
Shaming
to.
is not part of the equation. It's
Oof,
nowhere to be seen in it in our scripture, right?
right.
Jesus did not teach us. So whatever it's outside of that scope, you created yourself. And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, then I don't need to abide by that, right? Like I think sometimes we also need to develop thick skin because I think we need to take bold step, not stupid bold step, but like calculated, like minimize your risk, but take some action and take some risk.
Right.
In life, you don't risk anything, you're never going to go anywhere.
Well, that's what I was just recently telling somebody that, but years and years ago, I made I made, now it's over a decade ago now, because I remember
Hmm.
it was in applying for this job,
Hmm.
actually. So, like that was over 13 years ago that I actually applied for this position.
Hmm.
And you look at those descriptions and you go, oh, it sounds so lovely, right? Everything sounds so lovely. And you're like, oh, I'd be really great. And then you get to like what the qualifications are.
Hmm.
And then you go, oh man, I don't have that. Maybe I guess I can't apply. And that was like the first time in my life that I was like, you know what? I really like what I see here. I really feel like I sensed a spirit, right? As I was reading it, like that I connected to.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what, Leah, for the first time in your life, try not to be your own no.
Hmm.
If the answer is no,
Hmm.
then that's what it is.
Yeah.
But if you don't apply, you not only avoid the no, but you also avoid the yes,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so sometimes I wonder, like, are we saying no because we're so afraid of failing or rejection or
Yes.
not getting, that
Yes.
we could also then not do the yes. We don't get the yes.
Yep. Hmm. And that's the concern I have for the church in the future, right? Is that we are so afraid, because maybe the outside pressure of having to be perfect, having to be certain way, have to look certain way, be certain way, that we really are not encouraging risk-taking, innovation. Yeah. So like my prayer for our next generation is that they continue to rethink what it means to be in a kingdom here now. Because I think most of our theology would align that the kingdom is here now, starts here now.
Yeah.
And so we all have responsibility to do something right now. And my concern is not what they're going to be inside that building or not. My concern is whether they're going to continue to do the kingdom work where they are.
Which brings us rightly to the Care Bears, right?
Yeah.
Right? It brings us just around is what I would say to the Care Bears, right? Because that's that. How are you using that gift, that inner gift you have been given by God, which, maybe other people would symbolize another way. It's not like Share Bear was the only Care Bear that shared.
Right.
But, and so it doesn't, but that was their like core.
Yeah.
And so, my friend, if you were a Care Bear, which I feel like is so much easier to imagine than some other guests I've had on the show. So if you were a Care Bear, what color Care Bear would you be, or colors? Don't have to limit to one. And what would the emblem on your belly be? What would the love sin?
Did I take one of those tests? Like
you probably, you did.
Was it a sunshine, like the fun one?
Yeah, or Funshine Bear.
Sunshine Bear. The yellow one.
Right. But I don't know. I mean, which is like, right. Because then they're categorizing you to an actual Care Bear that exists. I
hate labeling. So don't label me to that.
So if you were to embody your own, right, you're giving your own labels now. And I love all those labels, but they're taken. So who's Francis? Who's Francis?
I hope my legacy, or people who knows me, would know how much I love having fun. To me, having fun is more important than anything else. I think having gone through so many different life experiences, health scares, I just want to have fun.
So what colors or color embody fun?
All colors.
All the colors.
All the colors.
All the colors.
I want to make a choice. I want everything.
And then what about on the belly? What do you have multiple symbols then? Not just one, but it's like a Kit Kat and
a soup dumpling, fried rice, or something along the line, something to do with food.
Yeah. And fun, right?
Fun, right.
Yeah. I'm all for that Care Bear. I love it. But I do think it is, you are correct in my impression of you is you make me think and you make me laugh all at the same time, and you definitely bring the fun to the party. So Francis, thank you for spending some time with me.
Thank you for the invite, and you know how much I adore you, love you bunch, and I just love, so be yourself. You are just, I love how you're just always you. Like I don't need to worry about Leah too much. It's like Leah's pretty, like she knows her stuff. So yeah.
Leah's pretty Leah. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
All right. You take care.
You take care too. Thanks.